The neat deal down there, if you hunt pre-rut, you want to be a little bit before the hard rut. And the rattle, man, you rattle. And the guy who called me just now that I had to hang up on, said we're fixing to do the podcast, guy Mike Brunson, first time I carried him down there, he said, that rattling doesn't work. I said, come on, let's rattle. The first set, and we're rattling, 8 bucks. And they're circling you. And they get to doing that sideways walking like they do. And he saw that. He said, that's unbelievable. He's here in Birmingham. Somebody asked Mike, but we had 8 bucks the first set. The most I ever had in a set was 11 bucks at one time. Why is that so much better there than it is here? The buck-to-doe ratio was 1-to-1 on the entire ranch. Those bucks had to fight. They were fighting for their doe. It wasn't a 15-to-1 doe-to-buck ratio. That's the difference. While they come when you rattle and they hadn't been fooled with, it was the rat. So when you carried people, we could go ride in the high rat truck, we could sit on stands, or we could rattle. And if it was that right time, oh my gosh, it's as good as it got.
When y'all rattled, was it almost exclusively from on the ground?
On the ground, always on the ground. Always on the ground. And you get back in the oaks, there wasn't but one problem with that. The seed ticks, the only thing they got more than deer in Texas is seed ticks. And you get back in those oaks and you snuggle up in all those live oak motts, and you get in there and you're rattling, and you forget about all the ticks deal. We got so eat up with seed ticks. Oh my gosh, that's the only negative of it. But killing those deer, oh my gosh, you get in there and those bucks come in. They always come. There's several deals rattling. People will tell you, all the tailgate talk. The deer always come in from downwind. They're coming dead. They want to know what's coming in there, and then they'll start circling. And it's almost like, and everybody's got different ways. I learned from Mike Morales that I thought did it more than anybody in the world. He was probably the best I've ever seen. He held the state record bow killing. And the picture that's on our 20th anniversary picture, some deer up on the feeder. One of those deer is the deer he ended up killing 2 years later, ended up being the state record boat kill that's on that Moultrie lithograph that we did. But as soon as we saw the deer, we're rattling. As soon as you saw them either sneaking in or charging, we put the horns down and started grunt calling. And that, because you let them sort of cool down and get in, and you want them looking because they ain't defined to come to that rattling so much. But there's no telling how many people we rattle deer in for that. And y'all know, y'all Alabama hunters, it's hard to rattle deer here. And you carry somebody out there and you say, look, we're going to rattle off a bunch of, they can't believe it when they see it.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about why you think it works so much better, because I've heard people say it's just because of how thick that landscape is that they've got to come looking for it, and maybe they do respond to it here, but you just can't see them or whatever. But that makes more sense, that it's just a 1-to-1 ratio.
Buck-to-doe ratio, and that those deer on that big ranch hadn't been shot at every day, hadn't been run with dogs, they were just in their native environment, and they would respond to the native deals that happen.
Funny side note, I want to talk a little bit more about the rattling stories. Yeah. You talk about hadn't been run with dogs. Imagine some Alabama hound hunters going down there. Okay, those dogs wouldn't know what to do. Those dogs would have lost their mind, let alone the hunters.
There used to be dog hunting in Texas, and in the state of Texas, we looked at some of their legislation. If it wasn't going to be a 10,000 acre piece, that their studies thought that it took 10,000 acres to hold dogs, so you wouldn't intrude on somebody else's property, and that led them to where they are. Now you still use tracking dogs and all that, but I don't think there's any dog hunting anymore.
Yeah, I just thought it was a little tidbit. Did y'all ever have any close encounters with a bow hunter on the ground while rattling with deer? Like they had to deer being a little too aggressive?
Yeah, they had to be good. The deer would come in, but as soon as they saw you, they would usually, and if you kept grunting and you were camouflaged, like I said, like when Mike was with us and those deer start circling, they're still, and they see those other bucks, so they're concentrating on those other bucks and they don't blow out. You get one deer that pours in on you, he sees you, he busts you, he gets downwind of you, catch you, he's gone. They'll blow out as fast as they blow in. But if you get that group, it's kind of like if you elk hunt. Y'all may have heard if you get into and penetrate the satellite bulls and get into the zone, people talking about T-boning elk, and you get into the zone, you can get in with those elk and they don't blow out on you. That's kind of like what it is around. It's about the same deal. You get into that zone with them.
Interesting.
Yeah,
So they almost get distracted by the other
It's
deer.
cool. I mean, it's just all that stuff and depending on where you live in the United States, it's hard. And again, this is 1 in a million places, guys. But to see them in that native environment and free range it's a rare deal to be able to do it, and I cherish the time that we had down there doing it. It was just unbelievable.
What is it about that place that makes it so productive? Because I mean, it's a desert,
Yeah,
right?
It is, but it's extremely high protein. Just like when you go down into Texas and Mexico, they all talk about. You ask them, they make salsa for the food, and they say, "Oh, is that jalapenos?" No, man. They all of them. Chili patin. It's hot. Hey, do y'all know about the chili patines? They're smaller, but they're hotter. And usually, the smaller the pepper, the hotter the pepper. Just like the deer food. The deer food, the smaller it's small food, higher in protein. The average protein level on those Texas deer, what they're browsing on, is off the chart. That all goes to horns and body. And a lot of those deer were smaller bodied. You don't get into the big, you don't get into the big body weights. But when you go to hunt Texas, and a lot of places, especially the hill country, has smaller bodied sized deer in Texas. That's going toward West Texas. If you don't have a guy and explain to him, if it doesn't look like the world record coming up, you're going to have such bad shrinkage. A lot of those deer, when we first started hunting them, and the beach deer were a subspecies of the deer that we would find in the oak mottes down there, and they would be extremely small bodied. Some of the ears would be 11 and 12 inches outside. You shoot that deer and you walk over there, and I mean, it's like this because it's ground shrinkage because the deer's smaller. The big deer are there, but when you see them, you know them. I showed one of my friends, Hugh Fadal, out in Colorado this past week about the guy. There was a cowboy on the King Ranch. I'll get his name. We'll plug it in on the deal, and people can Google it. But he killed the largest deer killed. It scored 245. They had a pasture, and I think it was 20 or 30,000. No, it's 10,000 acres for the cowboys. He was a cowboy on the ranch to hunt. He's in there trying to. If you Google the story of it, he's in there. He was just looking for a turkey to shoot to put on the grill. This deer walks out. He shoots him. They have to go shoot him again. It ended up being the largest deer killed, scored 245. It's typical. It's got double drops. It's in the Kennedy Ranch Museum down there now. And Bull Alvarez, I think is the cowboy's name. And if you go to Kingsville, that deer is actually mounted in there. They bought it from him, and it's unbelievable. But again, that deer probably didn't weigh 160 pounds. He killed that when we were down there. It was unbelievable. That's been long ago. But see, this is all 30, 40 years ago, guys. I mean, this is in the heyday of it down there.
And when you say pasture, it's not like a big fescue field.
No, pastures can be 10 to 50 to 100,000 acres.
And it's that brush country?
Yeah, well, brush country usually starts. We were on the Baffin Bay. The Kennedy Ranch bordered Baffin Bay down there. Probably as good a fish. Jimmy Houston used to always come down and go, "I can't believe you're not fishing instead of hunting." He said, "This is the best fishing in the world." We never had time. We were hunting the whole time. That just blew Jimmy's mind about it. But for redfish and specks, I mean, it was it. And black drum, those people down there catch those small black drum and eat them. They're fantastic, when they're prepared right. But it's just, I'm talking about, it's a different world then, guys.
And it's just all the native stuff that's growing out there that packs it on.
Yeah, and again, what you were saying about the pasture, If the ranch, you're looking at that ranch with 400 and something thousand, they may have had 35 pastures, but they 10,000, 20,000, 30,000. And the King Ranch rents their pasture. They lease their pastures to people who do pasture improvement and guys that are hunting. And they're anywhere, think there's pastures 50, 60,000 acres. But that's just part of the ranch, but they're referred to as pastures.
Right, because there ain't no soybeans down there.
No,
right.
no,
It's
no.
a cattle country.
It's hard to get anything. I mean, it's so dry. It's sandy, and so the soil is permeable, and you can't. There's no moisture. It's hard to grow a crop on there.
That's why it's so interesting that it's so productive. Like there's so many deer, they run cattle on it, and it grows such quality deer too. Even because normally when you think sandy soils, like you think of the lower coastal plain, and like you don't think about big bucks.
No, but it's just phenomenal. Those two guys, if you ever go down in that country, it's worth the trip to go do it. But there's a Kennedy Ranch Museum and there's a King Ranch Museum. These guys were the guy. If you watch like Lonesome Dove and they talk about Richard King and Lonesome Dove, that was absolutely factual. Richard King and Milton Kennedy were riverboat captains pre-Civil War, and they were running riverboats and moving goods, and they were trying to make a trail from the Spanish border, from the Mexican border up to Abilene to run cows. And this sounds crazy. They wanted to own the entire deal. And everybody, you gonna own a piece of property like that? They had already amassed 1,200,000 acres. They were 600,000 each, about 75 miles wide, and they had already made it all the way to Corpus Christi from the Mexican border. Civil War breaks out. And all this is in the museum for people. They moved their money into Mexican banks. I think they did some blockade running during the Civil War with some of the stuff we read. Civil War ends, they get all their money back. They start running the ranches for ranching. They stop the process of that. But the history in those two museums is, if people are into that, and not only the hunting, but the early American history and all the people that like Lonesome Dove, that's the real Lonesome Dove. When you look, it's off the chart.
Yeah, it sounds like it's worth the trip.